Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today I'm going to be talking about Barack Obama and how he supposedly gave a eulogy at John Lewis's funeral. And before we get into it, I just want to say again, please like, comment, and subscribe. That really helps me. Smash that like button, subscribe please, and let's get into it. Thanks for tuning in. So this article is from The Federalist by David Marcus, and it's titled Obama's so-called eulogy for John Lewis was a disgraceful political display. And it was. He looked like a snake oil salesman up there. It was pretty bad. In a moment that required unity and celebration, Barack Obama chose cynical political rancor. So it starts out, and I caught some of the highlights of it. It was very divisive. But that's what I remember about him. He was always divisive. It's just the media picked out his speeches here and there where you would think he's this unifying symbol, and he was praised that way too in the media, on purpose, of course. But this is who he always was. He was very divisive. He, before he was elected, he wasn't like playing the whole thing, but as soon as he did, he played the division right away. So Barack Obama is rightfully known as one of the most powerful orators of his generation. He is the only president in modern memory to have ascended to the national spotlight on the power of a single speech. With his eloquent words at the 2004 Democratic Party convention, his soaring rhetoric then and 4 years later on the campaign trail sought to bring Americans together. This is why the base and political nature of his eulogy for the late John Lewis is such a disappointment. And the speech began quite well. It did. In fact, most of it was a stirring and fitting tribute to a man who was truly an American hero. And I don't agree with John Lewis's politics, but he was a hero who, I think he was one of Martin Luther King's oldest friends, or oldest living friends, and he fought for equality without violence instead of with violence, and that's an important thing to do. He recounted not only Lewis's bravery in fighting racism in his youth, but his political skill in helping to bring about legal and political changes needed to secure the rights of all Americans. Towards the end, however, the former president veered into a rambling litany of radical current political demands that sound more like a convention speech than a eulogy. After slamming Republicans for very reasonable fears that an untried nationwide mail-in voting system could be a total mess, rife with the opportunity for corruption, Obama acknowledged he was drifting into controversial territory, he said. And, he pipes it up. He's like, I know this is a celebration of John's life. Like, he does this whole thing. He's always done this. There are those who might say we shouldn't dwell on such things, but that's why I am talking about it. Perhaps Lewis would have wanted him to speak of such things. Perhaps the firebrand who made good trouble would have applauded the politicization of his own funeral. But eulogies are not for the dead who cannot hear them, at least not with the ear of the material world. They are for the living. They are meant to celebrate the deceased and help all of us go forward as better people through having known their example. And then, this is why the laundry list of Democratic talking points Obama proceeded to launch was so misplaced and such a disgraceful use of time that should have been spent uniting Americans through the memory of one of its great leaders. Instead, Obama made it seem that if anyone should disagree with his preferred policy decisions, that person was not honoring Lewis's legacy. At times, it became downright ridiculous. And this is what they've been doing all year. He just chose to get even more radical now that he's not the president anymore. And I've been talking about this, it's black and white. There's no gray area. It's just like, if you don't agree with us, you want people to die, you don't want mail-in voting, well then you're contributing to corruption or whatever. It just goes on and on with all their talking points. It's so stupid. And I remember the Obama presidency. It was horrendous. It was bad. I mean, if you watched MSNBC and CNN, you probably thought he was a godsend, but he was not. He did a lot of the stuff he talks about. And like him talking about the filibuster, that we should get rid of the filibuster. Like it was fine when he had it. When he was in power, it was great. So this is a man that's, and I encourage you. There's a video on YouTube on if you're familiar with Larry Elder, he does a video on the great race debater, Obama versus Obama, and shows how when Obama goes in these speeches and talks about being black in America, it's just not true for him. He might be one of the most privileged people you've ever met, because he goes through his childhood from the private schools he went to Harvard to it was just on and on. He is a liar. He's just a liar. So his insistence that all good people must support statehood for Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico was downright cynical. It is perfectly clear that such a move would benefit his party in ways that could lead to unshakable one-party rule, but far more cynical were the means he described to achieve this end. And he goes on, eulogies don't typically come with threats of extortion, but that's exactly what Obama took this hallowed time to deliver. He said, and if all this takes eliminating the filibuster, another Jim Crow relic. Like I said, Jim Crow relic. Like it was completely fine when he was in power. It was completely fine. Like he didn't do anything about it. He's very good at talking about stuff that are racist, this and that, but didn't do anything about it when he was in power, when he could have. So he's full of it. In order to secure the God-given rights of every American, then that is what we should do. In other words, should Republicans fail to bend the knee, the rules will be changed to permanently keep them in a political wilderness. What is laughable is that Obama and the Democrats seem to have no problem using this Jim Crow relic, according to Politico. During Trump's presidency, McConnell and the Senate GOP have held time-sapping roll call votes to break a filibuster and end debate on nominees a whopping 314 times, according to Senate tallies. All previous presidents combined faced 244 roll call votes to advance nominees over a filibuster. So just think about that. During Trump's presidency, and this is just basic numbers, 314 times. All previous presidents combined, 244. So I don't want to hear from Obama about how the filibuster is a Jim Crow relic. He didn't do anything about it. All the stuff he talked about, he didn't do anything about. He's just a joke. Just as the ban on large indoor gatherings did not apply to Democrats holding a funeral, even while millions of Americans must say goodbye to loved ones without this most human of rituals, Democrats used the filibuster willy-nilly with nary a care about its supposed racist provenance. As ever, there are two sets of rules. Is that not exactly what Lewis spent his life fighting against? Obama's eulogy was an opportunity lost for the country to come together. Instead, it was pure partisan rancor. Obama's entire post-presidency feels this way. Having left the White House at such a young age, Obama had the opportunity to become a leader for all Americans. Instead, he seems to have settled into the role of a partisan hack. That is a shame. It is a shame because I knew that he wouldn't go away. He just wouldn't go away. Especially when Trump became presidency, and you can watch these videos on YouTube, the montage videos of how all the media, how a lot of politicians said there's no way he'll become president. I knew when he did, they wouldn't go away. They wouldn't let it go even. I mean, Hillary's still saying that she won, so. And then they turn around and say he's not going to leave the White House if he loses to Joe Biden. But these people have been saying that he didn't really win for 4 years. So, I mean, in America, we can, or at least at one time we could, find the lessons in the lives of great men when our specific politics were different. We could honor those with whom we had the staunchest of disagreements. Obama denied conservative Americans of all races, religions, and creeds that chance. He turned a moment of civic reflection into a campaign rally. But take heart, of course, all Americans can celebrate the life of the great John Lewis. even if Obama tried to apply a cynical political test to such a celebration. Lewis and his legacy belong to all of us. And that's completely true. I like how David Marcus of the Federalist did that at the end because, I mean, John Lewis was a good man. I mean, you have to agree with his legislative positions, but he was a good man that fought for good things, and how Obama just, this is what he does. This is what he's always done, so I'm not surprised. George Bush was there. I guess he gave a really nice speech. I didn't get to watch it, but and that's always the thing too. Is the media was saying, "Oh, George Bush, he's such a great man." Like 5 seconds ago, he was the devil. He was the worst person on earth to you guys. So it's like they did this too with like Ronald Reagan. When Ronald Reagan wasn't the president anymore, like he was the good Republican. And they do this with every candidate. It went like to Herbert Walker, then to his son, and it just goes on and on. I'm sure when Trump either in November or 4 years later, hopefully 4 years later, they'll say, oh, well, I mean, even Trump wouldn't go that far. I mean, he was truly, he fought for both sides. He wouldn't have done this to whoever the candidate is at that time. So, I mean, you could take what you want from what I'm saying, but anything Obama says is, I would research it. Then wanted to look at some of the later headlines going on too. This is interesting. So there's another article on here on the Federalist from Brad Betters. It says Antifa's support for open borders proves they're anti-American, not anti-fascist. In its attempt to defend and legitimize Antifa, the elite media has tried to claim the movement has a long anti-fascist and communist pedigree, a deep historical lineage, and an ideological coherency, which isn't true. In response to almost 2 months of uninterrupted rioting in Portland, Senator Ted Cruz took to the Wall Street Journal last week, calling the Antifa hordes hijacking the city radicals who hate the police, reject the rule of law, and are intent on terrorizing their communities. And if I hear George Floyd one more time, like this has anything to do with George Floyd. Like, what does burning Bibles have to do with George Floyd? This whole thing has been about just America and the West and all that it represents. It's just, and if you see these kids, they're like 18, 19, like young 20-year-old kids even, and teachers. A lot of teachers were getting arrested, which is weird. I mean, they can't go to school, but they'll go riot. That's for sure. In its attempt to defend and legitimize Antifa, the elite media has tried to claim the movement has a long anti-fascist and communist pedigree, a deep historical lineage, and an ideological coherency. But as my genuine and honest Marxist or member of the old left wing will tell you that this is completely false. The best proof of this lies in Antifa's stark anti-borders position. Antifa is so extreme on immigration after Willem I Am Antifa Van Spronson attempted to kill 2 immigration and custom enforcement agents in Washington State. An Antifa group in Philadelphia vandalized a local Department of Homeland Security building in his honor, sending out a statement that included, "We felt the urgency of attacking those who enforce borders, especially in the wake of Willem Van Spronson's death, while fighting those maintaining concentration camps in the USA." Okay, those are not concentration camps. Okay. You have these are laws that have been in place for I don't know how long, but years. A very long time. I mean, that's what makes a country is borders. Otherwise, we'd just be one giant utopia, which is what they want. And then just you have to come in the country legally. And I have friends that have come from Mexico and that they came in legally. There's a system you have to follow, and you will be rewarded with that with America, because America there's so much opportunity here, and people that live here, like these kids, have no idea. So it's just disgusting. Knocking down borders and removing restrictions on labor mobility, however, was the complete opposite of what Karl Marx advocated. Capital Marx wrote, always seek to maintain an extra reserve army of labor so it can keep workers cheap and docile. A reserve that can be built up by way of mass immigration and tapped whenever needed, as he said, concerning the mass Irish migration into England taking place during his time. Ireland constantly sends her own surplus to the English labor market and thus forces down wages and lowers the material position of the English working class. Elsewhere, Marx's right-hand man, Frederick Engels, wrote that whenever there was a temporary improvement, even for the great mass, like the 19th century Poor Laws or Factory Acts in England, this improvement always was reduced to the old level by the influx of the great body of the unemployed reserve. In America specifically, Engels wrote that it was precisely mass immigration that was creating class division by allowing so many to retire in early manhood, while the position of a proletarian for life mostly fell to the lot of immigrants. Marx also touched on the deliberating effects of mass immigration, what we describe today as brain drain, an issue long championed most by American old left figures like Walter Mondale and Ralph Nader. After all, how could it help global wealth disparities, for instance, if nations like America are allowed to plunder the most educated and entrepreneurial from places like Africa? Marx even assailed multiculturalism, saying it led to workers' antagonism and calling it a secret by which the capitalist class maintains its power. Fast forward to today, and we see an example of this with Jeff Bezos' Whole Foods. It was recently found through leaked documents to treat staff diversity as a positive factor in keeping unionization rates down. So when the Onion skewered Antifa as basically the unwitting shock troops of global capitalism, as usual, they were onto something. Antifa's hammer and sickle imagery further shows how fraudulent its communist pedigree is. ICE abolitionists should probably take note that the Soviet Union forcibly evicted tens of millions of ethnic minorities from their homes, both as form of retribution and political expediency. The victims included Cossacks, Tatars, Chechens, Koreans, Chinese, Germans, Hungarians, and natives of the Baltics. Unlike in the United States, many of these removals were based on actual racial and religious animus, were deadly on a genocidal scale, and has been determined by numerous governments and international bodies were proven crimes against humanity. If not traditional Marxism and the workers, then what exactly is motivating the extremist intersectional left on open borders immigration? What kind of faux Marxism is the elite media apologizing for? And it just, I mean, this is what Marxism is, and no one will talk about what, I mean, Marxism, communism, how many tens of millions of lives it's cost. It's just a joke because, I mean, like, people that, and it's funny because people that are privileged, and say like minorities that are privileged, like that are really wealthy, they talk about how great socialism is. Like, oh, socialism, like all day. Like Bernie Sanders, who's the ward of the taxpayer. Like, he's never really earned a buck in his life, except being paid by like you and me. But it's just funny how they're all rich, and they have no idea. I mean, that this is a philosophy that's cost tens of millions of lives. So I get sick of hearing about it. But I mean, this is the fight that's going on, and we have to continue to talk about it, to fight against it, because capitalism is freedom. I mean, capitalism is the freedom to succeed or the freedom to fail, but it is yours. And socialism would be, just the freedom of the government giving you as much freedom as they want, but they are in complete control of it. And if you do something successful, they own whatever they want of that, and they'll give you some or nothing, or I don't know, maybe all of it. Probably not all of it. Probably not any of it, but that's the idea of it. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. And we went over a lot today. Just a lot of stuff pissing me off in the news lately. So I don't know. Have a good day, guys, and please like and subscribe.